personal friend, colleague, well, I don't know, but needs to be said in public. I'm really grateful for your support and friendship year on year. I've known him for a decade or more on the SKA work, and more recently, the cybersecurity for SC23, which put me in front of 300 cybersecurity experts in the HPC world, which I was. By now, you know, I'm very shy, very humble, but I still needed the script. So he wrote a fantastic script, and I think that we'll present about that. Yes.
Thank you, Nicholas.
No worries.
Can everyone hear me? I think my task is to keep you people awake following that lovely lunch. I know that I've been sort of in the afternoon. I said, "Oh, yeah, I am awake." Yes, yes. So let's see if we can keep you awake. First of all, introduce myself. So this is a korero moku, which is not quite a mihi. It's really just an introduction, and you can read along. Well, I'll read the English as well. So no mai hare mai, welcome. Ko Duncan Hall toko ingoa. I'm Duncan Hall. Ke te whanganui atara e noho ahan ana ahu. I'm from Wellington. Ko manatu aurere te wahi tari. I work literally at the Ministry of Flying Around the World. That's the Maori phrase to describe the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I guess they didn't have a very good translation for the Ministry of Cocktails. So it's equivalent, for those folk who are not from New Zealand, it's equivalent to the US Department of State, the UK FCDO, Foreign Commonwealth Development Office, and in Australia, DFAT, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Ko kaihanga pū nāha matahiko tōku rōpū mahi. I work in digital, as in fingers and brain, that's matahiko, systems development. So I'm an informatics engineer. Ko me te mahi kai weta panganao, whaimana tāku mahi. I'm a chartered professional engineer, equivalent to a P-Eng in the US. Nō reira, kia ora tātou katoa. Hi. Secondly, some disclaimers. First of all, I'm going to be mentioning some organisations and some, I won't be mentioning my work. So first of all, SABSA, we'll come on to what exactly it is. The SABSA Institute, TSI, ISACA, which is a US, well, it's actually a global organisation, membership organisation, of which I have a number of certifications, which you can see there. I'm also a member of the NIST's High Performance Computing Security Working Group. So I'm the only person outside North America that regularly attends their meetings. This presentation is not driven by my day job, so there's no connection, no direct connection between what I do for my living and what I'm doing now. The reason why I'm doing this is for my continuing professional development. As a professional, I'm required to keep my competence up to date. So I have a number of professional accreditations. They're listed there, and that's why I do this. Okay. Now, why am I showing this painting here? Who knows what the painting's called? The Gleaners. Thank you, Rob. Oh, yes. Dead giveaway. When all else fails, read the manual. Good on you. 40-something years ago, when I was just starting out as an engineer, I used to act for my boss, and I'd sit in his office in the post office, as it was then in Invercargill, and every now and then I'd look up at the wall, because I was snowed under with stuff, look up at the wall, and there was a print of this painting. This is the real thing, by the way. That's my wife, having a look at it. It's in Dublin. I used to look up and just think, actually, there's a lot in this painting. Quite a lot, the print. There's women and children gathering what's left over after the guys in the distance have harvested the wheat. So they're separating the wheat from the chaff that's left. The painter apparently was roundly criticised at the time for painting scenes of the workers. They used to prefer to have paintings of people in in rooms with knights and so forth. But anyway, this is there's metaphors in here about, for me, about workers down at the ground level doing their thing, actually extracting extra value. And also for me, it's a bit like cybersecurity. You have to worry about the details as well as the big picture. And by the way, for those, this is the CISO. The CISO in an organisation is the person who has the role of checking that things are done properly. Don't necessarily do anything. So, for motivation for this talk, I want to introduce the notion of FUD. So who here knows what FUD means? That's good. For those of you who didn't stick your hand up, fear, uncertainty and doubt. So cybersecurity engenders fear, uncertainty and doubt. Karen had a good point about learning from her son, 13-year-old son, who was involved in, what was it, Patriot Defence or something like that. Cyber Patriot, that's right. So he was obviously attending some kind of training sessions in order to compete in one of these cons, these conferences. So who here has attended a con? A con. 4 of us. Okay. Nicholas asked me not to take my clothes off. I said I was going to try and keep you folk awake, so I'm going to ignore Nicholas's request, and I'm going to take my shirt off, and you can see I have on me now my T-shirt from the CHICON. Yay! Were you there? Yeah, 2023. So this is one of a series of hacker conferences held here in New Zealand where folk get together and really talk about vulnerabilities, things they've discovered, and things that they've found out about the our cyber environment. It says hacker here. Once upon a time I would have said yes, I was a hacker, but not anymore. Don't do that anymore. The reason why I've got the slide up here, does this work? Not on that screen. Okay. So I would highly recommend, if you've never attended a con, go to this website, CHICON, you'll get this in the presentation, and have a look at some of these presentations. They're on YouTube. The first one here, your biggest security risk might not be what you think it is. Who was at CHICON last year? Somebody was out the back? Sorry? You're organising it. Congratulations, you're doing a great job. These cons are usually done by volunteers, and to spread the word. So that first talk was actually about folk in the security world being absolutely overwhelmed and being burnt out to the point where they're not actually they're being less than effective. The last one, hackers on the, the last one down the bottom. 1 trust, 0 trust, red trust, blue trust. So those in the cyber world will know what we're referring to there. Red teams pretend to be attackers, blue teams pretend to be defenders. 0 trust is where most IT systems should be heading these days. Don't trust anyone, ever. Just an exhortation. Get yourself along to the next con that you can, wherever it might be in the world. So here's my agenda. I only want to talk about 3 things. I want to talk about SABSA, I want to talk about prioritization, and I want to talk about cybersecurity countermeasures. Okay, just 3 things. SABSA. What does SABSA stand for? It stands for Sherwood, that's the surname of one of the co-founders of the method. The Sherwood Applied Business Security Architecture. Each one of those words is important. It's applied because it's designed to be used in the real world. It's not a theoretical thing, well, there's some theory in it, but it's designed for people to be able to adopt a framework and add value to their environment. Business, because it's in the business world, people understand that business is, to do with value to the business. Security, because it is actually about cybersecurity, and architecture, because it's really a framework or a way of organising thinking. So if you want to get the body of knowledge, there is, in fact, a thick book, about that thick, about the size of a telephone, big, not today's telephone directories are tiny, but it's a big, thick book. You can go and buy it, and I'd recommend that you do. I have a copy. It's getting a little bit dated now. The third name on the authors down the bottom on that second page, the one with the red ellipse around it, is one David Linus. David Linus is carrying the torch of SABSA and continues to carry the torch of SABSA through partly his consulting company, partly through his sponsorship of conferences, and he's just generally the key man. Now, he's getting a bit on in years, as we all are. None of us are getting any younger, so he's looking to really rejuvenate the movement, if you like. That's David on the left. The person on the right is one Dr. Malcolm Shaw. Happens to live about 50 kilometres away from here. Malcolm is David Linus's company's chief security architect. He has a PhD in cybersecurity, information security from the University of Otago. His supervisor taught me when I did my MBA at Otago. So it's a small country, New Zealand. So there is another book you can download an electronic version of. It's called Security Architecture, How and Why. Now, a couple of caveats. First of all, there are some errors in the book. Secondly, this guy, Tom Masden, did a fairly naughty thing. He took the lecture notes that David Linus and Malcolm Shaw deliver and basically rewrote them into a book and published it. So if you can't get to a SABSA training session, Tom Masden's book is probably the next best thing. I'd much prefer you attend training, because that's how to really learn this framework. What is it? Well, it's an enterprise security architecture model that takes a business-driven, risk-based approach to developing security solutions that are aligned with business needs. So that's trying to boil it down to a small number of words. It starts with understanding the organisation's drivers, the organisation's goals, and the organisation's risk appetite. So there's quite a lot of soft stuff in here. It's not like you run a diagnostic across the organisation, you've got the answer. No, there's an awful lot of dialogue with senior business folk, the people at the sharp end of security operations, understanding what's important in the business and so forth. When I say business, equally applies to for example, a research organisation. Some specific techniques, I'll just give you a couple of examples. Business attributes profiling. That's the attributes, this way I can describe them there, categories that the business is concerned about. SABS also focuses on aligning information and digital services risk model to the organisation's risk model. So you've got to remember, senior leadership aren't just, for cybersecurity, sure, it's something they do actually worry about because they don't understand it, but they've got a lot of other risks they have to worry about as well. Financial, regulatory, and so forth. So cybersecurity is just one of those classes of risk. SABSA involves assessing control objectives and security strategies. Let's look at what we're trying to protect and what the strategies are. It is not a prescriptive, you start here and you work your way through and you end there and it's always the same path. SABSA is tailored for the context of the organisation. But one of its primary goals is to prioritise effort so that the effort you spend on cybersecurity is most effectively delivering value to the business. So it's mostly about prioritisation. The framework that it uses is very closely aligned to the Zachman framework. I had the pleasure of attending a full-day seminar by John Zachman. He came out to New Zealand some years ago. Very interesting framework that he developed. I recommend, if you don't know anything about it, just go and look it up on Wikipedia. It's kind of a way of thinking about what's important. That's the Zachman framework. This is the SABSA framework. And if you spend the time, you'll find that they're very similar organisation of ideas. So returning to that notion of prioritisation, SABSA is about traceably prioritising security controls to demonstrate business value. That's the big hang-up most folk in the commercial world have. Why should I invest in cybersecurity? Well, for one thing, when you get hacked, it's not if, when you get hacked, you better have a good story to say that you had adopted good practices. Even not just businesses, but government, quasi-government agencies. Here in New Zealand, the Waikato District Health Board was ransomware. Now, it took them a long time to recover from that, which tells everybody else in the world that they really were not prepared. Not just New Zealand. The Atacama Large Millimetre Array, a radio telescope system, was ransomware. It took them 3 months to get back online. That was an enormously expensive little learning exercise for them. The Gemini telescopes, they were hacked. Took them roughly the same length of time. Tells us in the cybersecurity world that these organisations had spent very little time considering cybersecurity. They were not prepared, and they had probably didn't even have a very good idea of what the architecture was. So, traceably prioritising security controls. So here's one example. This is the principles, advantages, benefits traceability. So you start with the SABSA principles. Don't worry about reading the fine print. Look at the generic advantages specific to roles within the organisation, and then identify the benefits delivered to the roles within the organisation. So here's an example. A SABSA principle is enable the business. The advantages, it's relating to value to the business. The benefit to the CIO is it enables them to be able to demonstrate value from digital transformation. Skip down a couple. Balancing risk, prioritised and proportional response. So you put your effort in where it most matters. Benefit to the CTO, Chief Technology Officer. The benefit is technology risk is understood in the overall context of business risks and opportunities. So this is what SABSA is about. I'm not going to try and cover all of the aspects of SABSA in this next 12 minutes, gosh. But what do we mean by the prioritisation? So I've developed, so this is my second topic, right? First one was SABSA, second one prioritisation. I've developed a view of what SABSA is about. As far as I can tell, it's unique. No one else has done this. So I view prioritisation of security controls as an optimisation problem. And whenever I see the word optimisation, my brain immediately clicks into, can this be expressed as a linear programming type construct? And yes, it can. So here's a visualization of what's going on. The x-axis is the amount of money you spend on information security controls. That's the x-axis. From $0 to some large amount. And I've called it I for investment. I'm not calling it expenditure, I'm calling it investment in cybersecurity controls. The y-axis is the residual risk to the organisation after you've spent your money on cybersecurity controls. So, money, risk. Now, you can actually spend quite a bit of time quantifying the risk in dollar terms. Not the topic I want to talk to today, but it can be done. So they're not like apples and oranges. Dollars. That's the construct, base construct. So the first thing is, if you don't do anything, let's call it 100% risk. You're going to get hacked one day or another. So you're going to start with 100% risk. You cannot have risk that's less than 0. So your boundaries on risk are between 0% and 100%. It's the first set of boundaries, boundary conditions for linear programming. If you don't know what linear programming is, Wikipedia is your friend. Okay, second set of constraints. How did that happen? Why is that wobbling? Have we got an earthquake? Someone crawling around on the roof. Okay. Right, so the second set of constraints, the business is only going to let you spend so much money. So that's this line down here. Remember, this is investment. You're not going to spend less than $0, are you? Well, maybe, but we'll come on to that. So you've got a rectangular space that you can operate in. Now, it turns out that if you start spending money on cyber security, you can reduce your risks. It's got to start up here. Spending $0, you get the 100%. It never gets to anything below 0. So it's got to be some sort of function that asymptotically approaches 0 as you spend more and more money. I've just put a arbitrary negative exponential in there. There's a reason for that, but I won't go into that right now. So that's what you can do. If you look at your portfolio of controls, you might be able to adjust them so that you can do slightly better. So here's an example of after some time you've thought about what you want to throw your money in, and so your risk profile can be like that. It still doesn't drop below 0, but you're doing better for the money you spend, any amount of spend. But what say the business owners, this senior leadership team says to you, you've got to get your risk below a certain amount. And here, I've used this green line. So in other words, you've got to have the risk below that green line. What's the problem? Well, there is a problem. The feasible region you can operate in, below the green line, less than the maximum investment, is that green area there. Who can see what the problem is straight away? You're not going to get there. You haven't got enough money, or you haven't got enough smarts, or that, there's something wrong here. It doesn't connect. So you've either got to make the case to push this boundary out to the right, in other words, invest more money in your cybersecurity controls, or relax the risk tolerance of the whole organisation, or get really smart and push that line down. This is what SABSA is doing. It's giving you the arguments. It's giving you the. Okay, got a magic pen here. Is this for shooting down aircraft? No, that's okay. So this is what SABSA is about. It's giving you the framework to think about how to communicate with the decision makers who know nothing about cybersecurity, don't want to know about it. They just want to be able to, when the things turn to custard, they're going to want to be able to say, we did what a prudent governance group ought to do. By the way, all this is in the PowerPoint. So, how do you choose your cybersecurity controls to get that exponential curve further down? How do you do that? Well, I'm going to share with you 5 alternative frameworks to SABSA. So SABSA has ways of doing it, but there are alternatives. So I'm going to share with you some alternatives. Now, because this is a conference and I pitched this as something to do with high-performance computing, I put up here the high-performance computing system reference architecture that's been published by NIST, and I'm on the working group that's developing cybersecurity framework within the NIST environment. So it doesn't actually tell you what controls to look at, but it's sort of disaggregating the controls into various aspects of high-performance computing. So that's one framework. How am I going for time? I've got plenty of time. So the next, by the way, there's A, B, and C in this first one. So the next alternative framework is a NIST internal, well, it's a measurement guide for information security, and it provides this diagram here, which it talks about going through some iteration around choosing which security controls you should put in place. So you can look this document up and read the words that go with this, and it's all about iteration, and that's about getting that curve a bit lower. Third NIST report, this is actually an internal report, but it's publicly available, staging cybersecurity risks for enterprise risk management and governance oversight. In other words, this is how to communicate to decision makers what cyber security investments are doing for the organisation. So that's the first group of alternatives, ways of looking at addressing better value for money for cybersecurity investment. A second framework, which I'm going to share with you, has a built-in sort of prioritisation. This is the Centre for Internet Security's 18 now controls. These are categories of control that any business, any organisation should at least be considering in today's world of cybersecurity threat. So you can read the top left, inventory and control of enterprise assets. You better know what you've got. I reckon both Gemini and Alma didn't even know what they had. It took them 3 months to recover from an incident. Down to the bottom right, penetration testing. Get the red teams, get an external specialist group to have a crack at you. They will find holes, you can guarantee it. A third framework, ISACA. I confessed, I'm a member of ISACA and I have a number of their certifications. The COVID 2029 Risk IT framework, again, shows how a business might iterate its controls. A fourth one, this is the ASIS Enterprise Risk Security Management Framework. Now, I confess I don't know a lot about this. I only discovered it in the last few days when I was hunting for alternatives to SABSA, but it looks very similar to me. Just identify and prioritize assets. Yep, know what you've got. Identify and prioritize risk, what your vulnerabilities might be. Address, prioritize risk, and circle around, continuous improvement, iterate. By the way, these are in reverse chronological order. So the earliest framework that I identified was the COSO Enterprise Risk Management Framework, which again involves iteration and just the basic processes. This dates from 2017. So all of this stuff is relatively recent, and that's because cyber threats have evolved. Prior to 2017, they were around, but not quite the level that they are now. My plus one, I said there was 5 + 1. My plus one is the Open Group Architecture Framework, TOGAF. I confess I was once TOGAF certified, or pretty close to it. It lapsed because I moved on from being a solutions and / enterprise architect. Oh, what's happened there? Anyway, TOGAF, what did they do? They saw that SABSA had a perfectly adequate framework, so they just incorporated it into the TOGAF framework. So you'll see there, business attribute profiling is the SABSA requirements engineering technique, which is pretty much what it is. That translates business goals and drivers into requirements. So, in summary, and a call to action. My summary is, SABSA, what does it do? It focuses on the highest priority information assets. The focus is on the most efficient portfolio of controls to reduce the residual risk in my linear programming context. It identifies trade-offs for investment versus residual risk. It provides traceability and therefore a rationale for commitment of investment in cybersecurity controls. Outside the US, it's used in many industries, not so much in the US at all, e.g. finance, government services. Who can tell me what an IC is? Intelligence community. Okay. So, intelligence communities and standards bodies. SABSA training emphasises SABSA in practice. So this is a thing meant to be used, not to study it as theory. But theory is also addressed, but not the linear programming context. That's my add to the fact. A vibrant practitioner community exists with 2 annual conferences, one held in Ireland. Hence my taking the photograph of the Gleaners, because I presented at the COSAC conference, Computer Security and Controls Conference, in October last year. And the week after next, I'll be in Melbourne, presenting at Melbourne COSAC conference. A call to action. So I see that the HPC community has a blind spot, a lacuna in terms of cybersecurity. It really needs to get with the game because you're becoming targeted. We've already heard from Andrew this morning. HPC is now on the radar, and it's not because they want to steal your information, they just want to disrupt you to get money out of you through ransomware. That's a start. State-sponsored actors will be operating significantly in this area. So, the COSAC community, that's the SABSA community, to reach out to NIST and high-performance community. That's me. That's me. I'm the one person who's reached out. SABSA to be presented at Supercomputing 23. That's Nicholas, supported by me. I was there in a video conference mode. The NIST and HPC folk to attend SABSA training. Well, I'm calling this some SABSA training, so you've just received some training. Okay, so I'll give myself 50% for that. The NIST and HPC folk to participate in COSAC, yet to be arranged. Yet to get some meeting of minds here, some investment. The NIST CSF2, which is under development now, to recommend prioritisation. Well, yes, the SABSA Institute, I contributed to the SABSA Institute's contribution to the NIST request for comments. So governance and prioritisation is going to be now built into NIST Critical Cybersecurity Framework, CSF, version 2. So with that, I'm ready for questions and any discussion. I will say that the PDF I've given Nicholas has an extract from Marsden's book, so if you want to get a little bit more detail, it'll be in the PDF. So.
Thank you.